description. For those who may not be able to see me on the screen, I am a white genderqueer person with curly brown hair. I'm wearing a brown button up and have some jewelry on. I am being joined today by my co-host and the editor of the 2024 Emerge Anthology. Ooh, Monet Cooper.
Hello. My name is Monet Cooper. I use she, her pronouns. I am a Black woman wearing a red lip and have a septum piercing. Behind me is a bookcase full of books and some license plates from Georgia. It's a pleasure to be here. I was a 2024 fellow for the writing retreat, and all of our readers were fellows as well. I was in the poetry cohort, and Chin Chin was my faculty leader.
Thank you, Monet. We actually were just talking about the poetry cohort at our 2025 Writers Retreat orientation because we talked about the beautiful centos that you made, your centos for Chen Chen, and how lovely the poetry cohort always is at making poems for their faculty member as a thank you. So tonight we are here to celebrate the launch of the 2024 Emerge Anthology. We have our ASL interpreters, Michelle and Kat, who will be joining us. Thank you so much to Michelle and Kat. And this is a proof of the book, so it's not bound, so it's kind of an illusion. However, if you would like a real bound version of this book, you can order it today at the sale price of $22 before it goes on general sale once it's published. On August 2nd, this upcoming Tuesday, our book is going to be a Leo. Monet, I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm very happy about it myself. And Noam has dropped the link in the chat for you all to take a look. And Monet, you want to take it over and tell us a little bit about the cover?
Yes. So first of all, I'm a Cancer, but I love Leo season. I'm a cusper, so shout out to the Leos, period. Um, so the cover is from a Detroit artist who's now based in Brooklyn, Daryl D'Angelo Terrell. And so shout them out for real. Just blessed that they said yes to being on the cover. Also wanted to shout out Roger Q. Mason, who was playwriting faculty during the 2024 retreat and has returned to this year's retreat to be the screenwriting, playwriting faculty for writing our foreword. And also for all of y'all who are listening, please bless the chat with emojis, celebrations, wonderings, musings, whatever's coming up in your soul as you're listening to the readings, as you hear things. We love affirmations. We love blessings. I think it should, I'm tossing it back to you, friend.
Thank you, Monet. So just so you know, we will have a break in the middle of our reading so everyone can take a bio break, get whatever refill of the beverage you're drinking, a snack perhaps. And yeah, I think with that, we will get started with Monet has a care note for us.
And so the care note is originally in the beginning of the book, and I'm gonna just read a piece of it because I want us to get started with the reading. The word work in this anthology thinks with queer and trans life, which is to say, for the want of infinite space, so much of everything. In the Emerge Anthology, we are writing about who we are, what we cause to happen, what has happened to us, what we freedom dream, what lies beyond dreaming, and what lingers in palimpsest. And not all of it is good. or loving or safe. This means that at times you will hear work in this anthology that may reference, in nonfiction fellow Daniel's words, queer and trans pain, harm, and negation. In fact, one could say that the lives of people whose identities are marginalized by systems of imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy, and cis heteronormativity, shout out to Bell Hooks and Laverne Cox, will indeed encounter pain in some form. This pain is not because of who we are, but because of systems that say we should not exist and do not exist. It is, in fact, these systems that in turn orchestrate our worlds in concerted attempts to make these ideas real. Our work does not give in to the rhetorical calisthenics of violence. We do as Angela Davis instructs, name and examine the things that attempt to keep us incarcerated in the moment as we continue to build transgressive temporalities that exist within and across the space-time offered to us. In this book, at this reading, you might encounter moments of what I'll call attempts at incarceration, the way structures operate through time, people, geography, infrastructure, and language, among other technologies. They attempt to keep us in fear, silence our pens, or tighten the aperture on objection. But make no mistake, it is an attempt. We do not remain arrested in time or space. We are not objects without agency. And while we may not be able to refuse the violence that is placed on our plates in the moment of the encounter, we can and do right into the ways one might contend with its menacious occupation of space in our individual and collective lives. We get to choose, and at times the choices we make do not always end in self-preservation, utopic world-making, or relief. Our decision to write what we like, gratitude to Steve Biko, remains a defiant example of our refusal to write carcerally and our embrace of writing with narrative abundance, attending to the expansiveness of queer and trans life. Some of the pieces in the Emerge Anthology have accompanying care notes for these moments of attempted incarceration. We do not know the systems you have been forced to live within or what you've been asked to survive. So we write these care notes to allow you to make a decision about what to read and how to read. May this care note, tendered at the beginning of this book, this reading, and braided throughout it, provide space for you to dig into these works. In the whisper of my friend Carlina Duan, we welcome your careful attention to how your eyes blink, your hands touch, your ears percolate on a line, how you sit within the pause you must take, exhale the breath that catches, lift your wrist to turn a page, or maybe how you are holding yourself now. Welcome to the listening. So the next person I'd like to introduce is Adele Fells Carpenter.
Thank you so much, Monet and Chloe. Just really incredible to open with this care note. So my name is Adele Fales Carpenter. Just to give a quick visual description of what's happening on the screen, I'm a white femme person in my mid-40s. I have long brown hair and bangs. I'm wearing pale dangling earrings and a purple top, and my background is blurred. This is an excerpt from my piece titled Broomsticks and Bodycon about my child's political education. The week of Cora's 10th birthday and my 42nd, we pay a visit to our friends and their new baby. Cora, an only kid who's prone to mopping the floor with her body like she's warming up for a contact improv jam when she's asked to help with something, snaps to a tender and patient attention in the baby's presence. We giggle at his curling toes, grasping her finger, while he gurgles a spitty smile. I find his mere presence awe-inspiring, but equally so the fact that people keep wanting to make new life, that they keep laying chips on the world in this particular and particularly demanding way. At some point in my many years of trying to conceive, I had to admit that my eventual despondency came not just from the limits of my own aging body, nor comparing the contents of our savings account to the costs of IVF, but also from the ways in which the world had changed and perhaps worsened in the years since my co-parent, Miriam, had given birth to Cora. November 9th, 2016, Cora is too young to understand the election results, but stares at us with wide eyes as all the adults in the house cry our way through breakfast. A year later, I'm rocking Cora to sleep in her room after attending a protest against a gathering of white nationalists in our city earlier the same day. She raises herself off my lap, carefully inspecting the insides of my ears. I'm checking to see if there are Nazis hiding in there, she tells me matter-of-factly. I thank her because checking for Nazis in the space between our ears seems like a thing we should probably all be doing more often for the people we love. November 2023. Cora's attentive silence as we walk down Market Street on a rainy night, surrounded by other families and children, to the chain link fence surrounding the APEC Heads of State dinner, where Biden will be arriving. The rind on the cardboard watermelon slice Cora has colored is soggy and dripping green pigment at its edges. Normally, Cora would be making her displeasure at the cold, the late hour, loud and clear, but she seems to register that people don't bring their babies out in the rainy night for fun. Her eyes meet mine silently. I know it's cold and we need to find dinner soon, but someday I think we'll be really glad that we were both here, I say, my words catching because I'm suddenly struck by the absurd courage and inadequacy of this scene. A line of strollers draped in plastic sheets, facing a line of riot cops. The light overhead changes again from red to green, reflecting off the wet blacktop, a silent light show for Palestine. Cora nods solemnly. As a child, I was preoccupied with injustice and grateful when adults respected me enough to discuss it, and so always imagined that as a parent I would talk openly about the contradictions of our present with my own kid. But it turns out my child quickly becomes anxious in and would often rather avoid conversations about how unfair the world is. She was sober and pensive when attending protests in defense of migrant rights or against anti-Black police violence. But at other times, she's been disinterested, particularly in instances involving those issues most proximate to her own life. For what felt like, and indeed was, a short lifetime, Cora seemed to doubt that homophobia even existed. By 8, she'd become a walking wiki of RuPaul's Drag Race competitors and was keen on bragging to her friends about all of the times she'd seen live drag. She liked knowing she was born in an apartment in San Francisco on Folsom Street and that this lent her a certain amount of queer credibility. She knew very well that most families don't have two moms and that where both parents live with their kids, they don't typically also have other partners. But when we would inquire if she might join the rainbow group at her school or why she hadn't bothered talking to the other kid in her class with queer moms, her invariable response would disappoint us as much as our questions seemed to mystify her. Why would I? Cora exchanged passionate love notes and drawings of wedding dresses with her first grade bestie. She and her friends hatched plans to communize. 5 of us will marry each other, and 100 of us will live in a big hotel with 100 different rooms, and everyone gets a couple of kids to take care of at night. Gender was expansive and flexible. She'd often correct me regarding other kids' shifting pronouns. In 2nd grade, when she shared the headlines for the Daily Annual, a tabloid-like elementary school newspaper she had taken to writing, included were boy tries to use girl's bathroom, alongside moon can be seen over playground in the middle of the day. I tried to inquire how she knew that the kid using the girls' room wasn't just using the bathroom that was the right one for them. She rolled her eyes, knowing exactly where I was headed, impatient and patronized by the gentle prodding of my inquiry, and assured me that the issue at stake was not one of policing trans kids' use of bathrooms, but about intervening on sexist antagonism. No, Amma, this kid is not a they. He's just always trying to make girls angry any way he can. If Cora experienced her extended family of queer and trans aunties and uncles as a fact of life, instead of something carefully wrought and in need of defense, what value was there in introducing to her a sense of threat and alarm? I expect the world and its brutalities are coming for young people in ways that we can only begin to imagine. Was my job as a parent to impart and prepare her for the unfreedoms that lay ahead, or to help her to live inside of those freedoms well enough to develop a sense of love for and entitlement toward them, such that she would eventually refuse a world without them? Thank you so much. I'm pleased to introduce next Karis Rogerson.
Thank you so much, Adele. That was such a beautiful reading. Thank you for sharing that. My name is Karis Rogerson, and I am a white woman with short, curly-ish hair and glasses. I am wearing a yellow dress with some flower-like splotches, and I am in front of a darkening window. This piece is part of the opening of a YA novel that I wrote called Nat and Cammy's Guide to Running an Undercover GSA, the first chapter of which was my Emerge piece. I've never really given much thought to whether I'm an ass or an arms lesbian, but I'm pretty sure Natalie Bonner just sealed the deal for the asses. She's stretching right outside the window of the prop room I'm sequestered away in, making the Italian landscape fade away as she bends over to, I don't know, stretch out her quads or something. And how am I supposed to pay attention to paints and landscapes when the most gorgeous girl I've ever seen is right in my line of vision? I swear her ass could win an award. Never mind that the cross country team has always mystified me. Other sports I understand: soccer, volleyball, basketball. They all have a purpose, a very specific goal. Even track and field has those fun jumping and throwing events. But cross country, just running through the hills and forests for hours on end, no thank you. I forgot my headphones in my room, but fortunately, I have the entirety of the soundtrack of Six the Musical memorized, so I hum to myself as I get back to painting. It takes some doing, but by the beginning of Don't Lose Your Head, I'm in the zone, swaying to the beat. I'm so deep in my thoughts that when someone clears their throat behind me, I actually jump in the air and land with my foot in a tray of paint. I Though, oh God, sorry, I lost my place. And there we go. I'm so deep in my thoughts that when someone clears their throat behind me, I actually jump in the air and land with my foot in a tray of paint. Oh shit, I holler, yanking my shoe out of the tray. I turn around, ready to yell at whoever interrupted me, but my foot's in midair, so instead I just kind of awkwardly hop like a flamingo, flailing. And that's how I turn around and come face to face with none other than Natalie Bonner, she of the prize winning ass herself. In my shock at seeing her in front of me, as though I conjured her from thin air with my earlier fantasizing, I drop my foot to the ground. It lands with a wet squelch, and we both grimace. I follow her gaze down to the floor, where my shoe is leaving a very conspicuous footprint in yellow paint. Damn, I say, Miss Shoe's gonna freak out. Natalie Bonner giggles, and it's so cute. Oh God, why is her giggle so cute? I clench the fist that's not holding a dripping paintbrush and try to get my mind off of her cute giggle. But then Natalie Bonner steps closer to me and bends down, and her ass is in the air. Her shirt rides up so I can see a strip of the bare skin on her back. And oh my God, I'm going to black out. What is she doing to me? Pick up your foot, Natalie Bonner says. And so I do because she commanded me to. Okay, maybe commanded is a strong word, but I like the image it conjures of her telling me what to do and me listening. I blush and spin on my heel so she can't see my cheeks turning pink. If Noah were here, he'd be poking fun at me for being a useless lesbian bottom, but he's not, and thank God for that, because I do not need Natalie Bonner thinking I've got the hots for her perfect heterosexual self, even though I do. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our next reader, Jalen Giovanni Jones.
Hi everyone. It's so great to be here with you all for the launch of Emerge. Lambda Literary is such a special group, and I'm very excited to be with you all. Um, so my name is Jalen Giovanni Jones. Just a quick self-description. I am a Black and Filipino man with brown skin, short black hair, really cute dimples, and a generally fun disposition about himself. I am wearing a very chic blue polo, a blank off-white background, and a very convincing smile. So I was in the fiction cohort last summer, but tonight I will be actually reading two poems that I have in Emerge. So the first one is titled I Had My First Slow Dance. I had my first slow dance when I was 19 years old, in the next town over, so our parents wouldn't catch us. At the back of a thrift store, we waited for strangers to leave the antique lamp section, so alone I could browse the small of your back with caresses only meant to be seen with closed eyes. It was awkward, as first slow dances are, never done neatly, when it's your turn to stall your sway against a fast beating heart. And up next, I'll be reading a second poem titled Homecoming. Homecoming. The average person blinks between 15 to 20 times per minute. Every 4 seconds, our reality is invaded with a quick burst of black, an immersion that expires just as quickly as it ignites. First, there's the menial yet well past trivial task of lubrication. Blinks pervade us through their unforgiving adamance. They interrupt movies, even when your eyes are glued to the screen. They get in the way of a good book, adding punctuations where they aren't written in. And they pepper a beautiful sunset, even as they forge the new oranges of the shimmering summer coast. But blinks stay with us to remind us of our comfort, the cradling care of darkness. The glasses come off when the screen starts its strain. A good cry is consoled by an aggressively manufactured shut. A child hides under covers when he's scared of monsters under his bed. And you instinctively close your eyes before leaning in for your nervous first kiss. We escape into darkness because it's always been there for us. Like a beating heart, it persists irrespective of recognition, just beyond our peripheries, yet forever indulgent in the margin. Unlike a beating heart, it perseveres and will welcome us to eternity. That's all from me. Thank you all so much for celebrating the launch of Emerge. Love you, Lambda. Up next, we have the great Finn Leary.
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Finn Leary. I am a white genderqueer person with dark brown hair and blue eyes, and I am wearing a sweater vest that is brown in color with a blurred background behind me. I'm going to be reading from an early chapter of my young adult novel, Son of a Bookman. Son of a Bookman is about Nat Gallagher, a transgender high school senior who needs to beat his academic rival Diego for a prestigious fellowship that will let him afford college. When Nat learns that his late mom's novel, published posthumously, is being challenged at his school in Amherst, Massachusetts, he decides to band together with his classmates, including Diego, to fight against censorship, even if it means that Nat must face not only his rival, but his grief in not having come out to his mom before she died. Nat's room on the third floor of Plath Hall, like every other building at Dickinson Academy, had a slight Gothic feel. The dramatic arched windows and intricately carved doors always made Nat feel like he was living in a castle. His dad picked up on the second ring. "Hey, little squash," he greeted Nat by his bizarre nickname for his son. "Did you call me to talk about how the Red Sox are doing?" Nat smiled and rolled his eyes lovingly as he removed the corkboard that was hanging over his bed, revealing his neon sign that read, "Bisexual Disaster," which his dad had given him, unaware that neon signs were among the list of contraband that students were not allowed to have in their dorm rooms. The corkboard, filled with pictures of his friends and parents, and some Harvard good luck charms like a pennant and a campus map, served as the perfect disguise to any unsuspecting visitor. "I did not call you to talk about sports, but you can tell me anyway." A smile bloomed on Nat's face as his dad rambled. He liked sports much less than his dad did, but he loved that phone calls felt like you were sitting right next to the person. It made the roughly 2-hour drive between them feel small. Aware he could only listen to sports talk for so long, Nat paced nervously around the small room, gazing out his window. It was comforting to see people going about their daily routines. Is there anything bad in Mom's book? Her last one, I mean. What had his mom written in Fishing for Ghosts that would have Professor Kell worried it might be censored at Dickinson Academy? Nat's mom was a proud pansexual author, and a few of her middle grade and young adult novels had queer characters. But Dickinson Academy was also a campus that had renovated to add some gender-neutral bathrooms to the halls, and they were quick to change Nat's name on everything in the system, even though he hadn't had a legal name change yet. There were Black Lives Matter signs on campus and school-funded trips to Hampshire Pride every spring. This was not the kind of place where books got banned. His dad paused, and Nat felt the 2 hours of highway stretched between them. "There's nothing bad in it," his dad said with certainty. "There are some parts that are a little sad and hard to read, but it's a happy story. I really think you'll like it." Ian was not a huge reader, aside from his love of War of the Worlds, which made the fact that he read all of Mary's books even sweeter. Nat wondered if his dad was out driving. He hated to think of him at home alone, eating a Hungry Man frozen meal for dinner. He almost begged his dad to let him switch to public school after his mom died, but they'd all worked too hard for him to get here, and his mom would genuinely haunt his ass if he gave up now. "It sounds great. I'll tell you what I think when I read it," Nat said, and he wanted to mean it. Then he changed the subject, not wanting to share with his dad what Professor Kell had said about the book potentially being challenged on campus. I gotta go, I'm picking up a customer. Nat and his dad said a quick farewell, and Nat was left in the dangerous company of his own thoughts. Nat plopped onto his twin bed and picked up his copy of his mom's book for probably the 50th time and thumbed through it. The cover of Fishing for Ghosts, which was about a teenager whose parents were traveling ghost hunters, was a swirling sea of blue and featured 3 shadowy figures sitting in a small speedboat with fishing gear, along with a pearlescent and semi-translucent ghost. This was his mom's last book. There was nothing in her writing studio, no unfinished idea fragments in her notebooks. Once he finished it, it would be like a movie where the main character finds out that their dead mom had planned ahead to prepare the perfect gift for a milestone birthday. He would unwrap the package, and that would be it. No more advice, no more singing with his mom in the living room, no more ordering Chinese food at the last minute because she had spent hours writing and had forgotten to start cooking. Nat flipped to the front of the book to look at the dedication. When the book was in edits with his mom's publisher, Nat's dad called him. The dedication used Nat's dead name, since his mom died before he had come out as trans, and his dad asked if he wanted to keep the sentiment, but change the name. Nat's dad had placed the decision in his son's hands, reassuring him that his mom would support the change if it was what he wanted. The dedication of Fishing for Ghosts by Mary Gallagher now read, "To Nat, I loved you before I even knew you." Thank you so much, and up next is Shinju Chen.
Hi, thank you. I'm Shinju Chen. I'm an Asian person with short hair. And my background is a commissioned art of 2 Asian people, and there's a dog. So today I'm going to read an excerpt from Ghostly Gift. This excerpt contains bones, past arson, and past death. Hello, you call into the darkness. Anybody there? It has been almost a decade since you last came here to the temple by the ocean. Even with that, you were not expecting it to be empty, half of it covered with scorch marks, the other half eroded by the ocean breeze. You run your fingers through the strands of your long hair, attempting to smooth out the parts flattened by the helmet after an hour's time on the road. It is unlikely the Jitong is still here, of course, but you don't have any other option but to pray for the best as you slowly enter the ruins, smartphone flashlight turned on in one hand, one key gripped in the other, just in case. As you edge further into the temple, you can hear nothing but your own footsteps and the ocean waves outside, sounding distant despite the flimsy walls. Some of the wooden columns have been burnt down, and the full length of one wall is covered with soot and writings in red ink. Rejection of the third eye is rejection of the deities, you read out loud. Spirits don't deserve banishment. You pace along the wall, taking in the similar sentences and slogans painted in different handwritings. So these are the people who are against the Jitong, the only person who was able to help the very few townspeople who wish to stay ghost-free. Has the Jitong been driven away from the temple? Are they hiding somewhere in town, but you have been too out of the loop to know where? Are they... Something on the floor makes you stumble and your phone almost slips out of your hand. You send a silent prayer to the deities that you didn't drop it and end up with a cracked screen. Perhaps you sent the prayer a little too early because when you look down at your feet, you scream and drop your phone. It is a skull fragment. You know it is a skull fragment because when you look around, there are a few other pieces lying nearby, cracked and yellowed. Some smooth and round, and some teeth. There is only dead silence in the temple. Once you made the mistake of mentioning that you and your wife, then fiancé, do not wish to acquire any type of sixth sense at another family gathering. You don't know what you were missing until you gain another sense, your Abu said while chopping up bits of sausages for the clay pot rice she was making. You think just you and your lover will be enough as a family, is it? But you knew it would be enough. And you heard from those gossiping neighbors' aunties last year that the friends of one of your other neighbors had slipped bits of flat peach into her daily smoothie one morning just for the fun of it. And a week later, she ended up with a ghost that drove her into madness within a month. You shudder at the thought and bend down to pick up your phone. No damage so far. Another sweeping glance at the floor gives you no further information on where the Jito might be now. Or perhaps this is their skull, that they died in the fire or stayed here to protect the temple as other people rampaged the place. You will never know. Not wanting to stay here any longer with the dissembled body and the blood-red writings on the wall, you turn around and exit the remains of the temple. The broken piece of jade still hung around your neck. Time to face your wife. Thank you. And up next is Dan.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. So for self-description, I'm a white genderqueer person with used to be red mostly. Now it's red and white beard, curly brown hair. There's a bookshelf behind me and a sort of like Huga wall hanging from TJ Maxx. All right. So, and this is from my essay, My Words to Julian Baker from the Halls of Hill House. Yeah. And I was in the creative nonfiction cohort last year. It's a week before the election when I drive into San Francisco to see Julian Baker of Boy Genius fame. My date for the night is canceled on me a few weeks before, and my alternate cancels that morning, citing a fraught parental drama. It's good, my friends assure me, for caretakers to have time to ourselves, to schedule that time and hold to it. So I get dolled up and head into the city. I arrive an hour before the concert and grab a quick dinner near the venue. A light is falling and the venue's on the outskirts of a tourist neighborhood where the foot traffic is lively. I take my run at the vending table with the other early arrivals, mostly other queer and trans folks, before heading to the bar. The bartender tells me she's a gin girl, and I respond that I, like so many queers, like Julian Baker, am dry these days. She corrects herself. She's sober too. She used to be a gin girl. We bond over this shakeup and the usual protocol, and she finds me a jar of non-alcoholic gin behind the counter. The drink she whips up is a strange mix of floral notes and pineapple, but she undercharges me for it, and I'm grateful for this odd moment of camaraderie. I don't know either of the openers, and the venue has a little lounge, so I take a seat in a corner to nurse my phone. Deliciously alone among folks like me, I make my first read of Susan Stryker's legendary essay, My Words to Victor Frankenstein, above the village of Chamonix, while the opening act streams in from the next room. A strand of trans theory, originally delivered at Cal State San Marcos in the early 90s, the essay is a mix of personal reflections, memoir, and critical theory. My first college teaching position was at CSUSM, and while I read, I picture Stryker giving the address in my old classroom. My body limps as she aligns herself with Frankenstein's inhuman monster, confronting the good doctor and calling into question his fraught and partial notions of nature. She writes, quote, like the monster, I am too often perceived as less than fully human due to the means of my embodiment. My exclusion from human community fuels a deep and abiding rage in me that I, like the monster, direct against the conditions in which I must struggle to exist. When I move through public space on my commute to work, a towering figure in a skirt and a dress shirt, I am a spectacle to some. I usually travel in the daytime, along routes that often feel predictable and safe. When I'm greeted rudely, I've developed a risky habit of lashing back. Like Stryker, my unquiet body is home to no small amount of rage. Months ago, maybe even years, I decided that I'm tired of living in fear of men, their violence, and their haughty public disapproval. Since then, my body moves on its own, a thing haunted by its own refusal to disappear. This drift has a way of taking over, of setting my gaze when I notice another middle-aged commuter mean mugging me on the train. This aggression passes through me like weather, like a wave, like an exhaustion. Once, confronted with an older woman's startled dismay as I stepped onto the bus, I heard myself say, I'm just a person. Thank you. Now let's take a 5-minute break.
Thank you. See everyone at 17 after.
Hey, thanks, Alyssa. I am white, trans mask, person in my home office with a kind of soft lamp glow on me and a like jauntily tilted lampshade showing in the background and my bookshelf and two doors kind of facing the same corner. Thank you so much to Monet and to everyone who made this happen, to our ASL interpreter Kat, and I was in the poetry cohort last summer with Chen as well as Monet and Meredith and whoever else might be gracefully lurking in the corners of Zoom. So good to see you again and share this space with you again. I also see, I think I see Holly out there. Hi, Holly. Um, so I'm gonna read the poem that I have in Emerge. It's called It's Time to Talk to Your Straight Friends About Death. The position had been filled by the time I'd finished harvesting my aura. No, the other time I died. There are only stupid questions. There is no such thing as straight friends. One day, I woke up in a polycule, and now I have sexual tension with everything. If you were the cops, don't worry, you can't read this. You can't cough up a sonnet these days without someone calling you endangered. I should know. I've been pulling the freight trains. Only the slow ones make it to the club on time, but my congressman keeps leaving me on red. Can anyone in here do a handstand? That position has been filled by me. Let's say I died the most unhinged person in this poem. It doesn't matter if the tree is hollow. The sentence is like a leotard, flexible if not forgiving. Boyfriend is a word birds nest inside of. When I was a drugstore of absolute beliefs, I couldn't pay the rent. I owe everything to the People's Free Sex Program. It feels like breaking into FBI headquarters each time I use the bathroom at work. I had to devote the best of me to my very worst ideas. How else would I know what God feels like? It's like impersonating a bug whenever I go to the bank. Whenever I go to the bank, I make the teller tell me why I'm there. I never climbed a hill I wasn't ready to die on. I'm not sure if I'm a horse. People really want me thinking about the hypotheticals. Most of the time, I'd say I'm resisting arrest. Higher power, stop these ruminations. This mouth was not made to eat men, so why am I writing the world's longest telegram? My first words were SOS. Yes, it was adorable. Everybody laughed when I fell off my missile. Death is actually a really positive card, I said, and threw the tarot at my problems. It's time the world knew about trees. Who is going to tell them? Everyone's too busy going to look at houses when they are on fire. Like, we get it, you're on fire. I wish that you could fire your parents. When my dad fired me, all my siblings went on strike. You don't have any siblings, he said. That's because they're all on strike. Who is the joint in joint custody? If you bring a weed to a party, it's rude not to share your life story. I know you'd rather keep your opinions on wokeness to yourself, but won't you reconsider? Who gets the other half of my half sister? I put my foot down when it comes to being a museum. A white iris and a crumpled cocktail napkin are not a binary, it's a spectrum. Being gay used to be expensive until I flooded the market. Lord, Protect me from my poems. Lord, don't talk to me until I've had my morning coffee and photos of Israeli war crimes. I feel terrible. I need someone terrible to talk to. That's why I invented Europe. I don't know if I am God, but I have regrets. What's the antonym of architect? What is the opposite of men? It is thrilling to find yourself inside city limits when the city is a tree. The revolution is my boyfriend, and I see the way you're looking at my boyfriend. It's okay if I'm a ghost. The magic wand will definitely still work on me. And I'm sorry I talk with my mouth. Where would you prefer I hide my deepest feelings? Inside the closet with my dancing shoes? I haven't seen you either. I'll get on my hands and knees and we can try it out. Thanks. And pleased to introduce Mira Peng.
Hi. Hi, thank you. That was so beautiful and powerful. I'm Mira. I am in my living room with my background, a wall of collage and a plant. And I'm wearing a white t-shirt. I am a Asian woman with black hair and bangs. Okay. I'm going to read two excerpts from excuse me, from my short story I Follow Rivers, the beginning part and the middle part. I follow rivers. I drive around in my 2003 Mercedes, and it's not fancy at all. It's an old car I bought from a classmate who got it from his dad. I remember the first time you came to my garage, you said, "Of course, what else would a hipster girl like you drive?" I ride an old-ass Mercedes, just like I ride an old-ass man's dick. But I'm on a mission now. I'm driving around like a thread eager to come through the needle eye. I'm impatient at the red lights and desperate at the stop signs. I'm looking for a silver Honda with its right side mirror broken and duct taped back on. I'm pretty sure you're the only one in the city who has a car like this. And if I pay enough attention, I'll be able to find it. It's like all the handiwork you did. The gray duct tape firmly holds the mirror in one. Maybe not forever, but strong enough and has its flavor. Like the keyring you made with a random wire to put my spare key on. Like an excuse me. Like the keyring you made with a random wire to put my spare key on. I can tell it's your work by looking at the sturdiness. I can just picture you bending it with so much determination. I studied this keyring I asked back from you when I last saw you. It sits on my desk now, dust slowly settling. I've imagined many times how you would sneak into my house and surprise me when we were dating, but you never did. Now the key is back to me. You never will. And then this is the later part of the story. The last time I saw you, you told me you were unemployed and had to move back to your mom's house outside LA. You were telling me how defeated you felt about this life. You were not sure if you wanted to keep working in the film industry. And here I am, sitting at the Fairmont Hotel's lobby with my primary partner, Henry, and his family for a wedding. Among glasses that are washed and cloth wiped dry, everything clear like diamonds in the sun, yet I feel alone. Let's not pretend I'm so much better than you. The economy hit both of us. Still unable to find a job. I may have to move back to Henry's place next month. Henry, the tall, lean man who's sitting next to me in black tie, sharp and clean, like the ideal man in a rom-com. I wonder how he feels about me now that you broke up with me after our 3-month-long affair, while he traveled in France and Brazil for his startup. I remember his unsteady voice every time I mentioned your name on the phone. Was he ever feeling threatened about losing me? Or was he just so confident in everything that he knew you and I wouldn't last? Henry pours me another glass of Chardonnay. It tastes as sweet as him. It's only 11 a.m., but the wedding will be long, and who is keeping the time? I look at Henry when I answer his parents' questions about other people's wedding. I've known them for 5 years now, and they accept me as their future trans daughter-in-law, and implied they embrace me if we ever wanted to get married. But what about Henry? Is he happy that finally realized you're just a figment? Or is he sad because he never enveloped me? Because he never enveloped me with such passion like you did. Or maybe, to everyone else, we're just two small people who fell in love and thought, for a moment, the whole world has stopped for us. Thank you. Next, we have the amazing Shelby Switzer.
Thanks, Mira. Hi, everybody. My name is Shelby Switzer. I am a white person with short blonde hair and fun glasses, I've been told. And I have a bright yellow background and some art on the walls. And I was in the fiction cohort. Tonight, I'm going to read an excerpt from my debut novel called Boy Goggles, which I'm currently querying. It's a different excerpt than what's in the anthology. And at the time when I submitted this to the anthology, the title of the novel was called Unclaimed Baggage, but that's changed. I don't think you need to know much, just the main character, Amaro, is searching for a monogamous partnership, which is impossible, we know. And they're having a lot of conflict and loneliness in their relationship with their best friend, Lex, who is also in this scene. Amaro opens a drawer by the fridge and pulls out their goggles. When they asked for a pair for winter solstice, Lex assumed Amaro was taking up swimming as part of their new dedication to make their life as boring as possible. So she went above and beyond in quality and aesthetic. They're anti-fog and also hot pink with light pink lenses and a glittery strap. Amaro hadn't even known they made goggles like this. They just wanted to make dinner without crying. Lex glances at them while she starts peeling the ginger. I fucking love you, she says. Properly protected, Amaro gets to chopping the onions. As the two friends assemble the groundnut soup, their bodies don't touch, but the space, the way they exist in it together, feels intimate to Amaro. The shock and unease they've carried since they saw the skeleton in the store and the annoyances they felt at Lex earlier fade away. The way the grated ginger disappears into the bubbling broth before them. The bubbling, rusty, orange-brown broth. They stare into it, admiring the way liquid can move and froth and turn into air. And at some point, they look up and see Lex is watching it too. They catch each other's eyes and smile. Once they've blended in the peanut butter and the soup is finally simmering on the back burner, and the ingredients for the rest of the week's meals are chopped and Tupperwared and refrigerated, Lex goes to the living room while Amaro stays. They're not ready to leave the kitchen. It's warm in here, and it smells good, and everything is a little rose-colored. Cookie time, they call out to Lex in the other room. I'm tired, she calls back. Get started without me. Aw, they call. She'd really rather watch TV than play with Amaro. Aw, she calls back. Well, this is no longer fun, but they still want cookies. They pull up the recipe on their phone. It's hard to read. Oh, because they still have their goggles on. They sigh and take them off. They're deflated. They're not even high anymore. This used to be their and Lex's thing. Lex taught Amaro how to bake, pulling out recipes from a scrapbook that all had some origin story. These were her grandma's world-famous chocolate chip cookies. That was the cake Lex baked for herself on her first birthday alone. Those were the Russian tea cakes that got her through her exams. They haven't used a recipe from that book in a long time. Amaro likes baking the chocolate chip cookies or the tea cakes the best, followed by pies or scones, really anything they can mold with their hands. It brings them back to ceramics class in college, kneading and slapping and pounding and massaging clay from a block into a bowl, and then picking and combining glazes to paint the surface. Except unlike baking, or maybe a little like baking, you never knew how it might turn out, how the materials would react with each other and with the heat, or if an air bubble was lurking in the clay waiting for the perfect moment to explode. It's magical, the difference between the before and the after, the pre and the post. Amaro has always been drawn to the before state, the pre-fired state. It's underrated, but just as beautiful. Dry clay bowls, dusty and earthen, or vases rolled in pastel glaze chips, bright like fruity pebbles. Outside the kiln room, too, they love caterpillars before the cocoon, seeds before the sprout, and soon, in Amaro's very hands, in their very mouth, cookie dough before the bake. Amaro collects all the ingredients for the cookies on the counter and gets to work. When it's time to mold the dough and assemble it on the baking sheet, they call out to Lex. You sure you don't want to get in on this? No answer. They poke their head out of the kitchen. She's not in the living room. Boo. Amaro thought she'd at least want to eat some dough. Should they save her some? They taste it. It's good, but not as good as they remember dough being when they made it with her. Fuck it. They pull out the baking sheets. They chunk off some dough from the bowl and roll it in their hands. The first time Lex saw Amaro's perfect dough spheres compared to her own lumps, still imprinted from the ridges of her fingers, she was delighted and made it her mission to outsphere Amaro, not just in terms of shape, but also making them as evenly sized as possible, so each cookie was identical. But Amaro is not interested in making perfect cookies today. They roll the dough into oblong shapes, some straight, some a little curved, and lay them out on the sheets. They look like sticks or bones, like Amaro has cast a chocolate-studded oracle. They hope it's a prediction of a partner in their near future, one who enjoys pre-cookie as much as they do. Thanks so much. Next up is Meredith Naka.
Hi. Thanks everybody for hanging in here. It's been a wonderful evening. I'm so excited to be here with this incredible roster of readers. My name is Meredith Naka. I'm a non-binary biracial Black person. I have dark glasses and curly brown hair and hoop earrings, and I'm sitting in front of a gray wall with an Edward Hopper painting. I'm going to read two poems from what has turned out to be my first book, which just got picked up. It's called Les Portes, and it's these two poems are going to be in the anthology. The book is about mass incarceration and domestic violence and how those things overlap. So these two poems talk about both like these concepts, but also what happens when we receive harm, how we stop ourselves from passing it on, and also what we can do without involving police and prisons. So this first poem is called Carceral Logic. True lasting harm pervades the everyday, so common as to be banal. No one is or has ever been immune. There has never been a person alive whose intelligence made them inviolable. And still we have built so few ways to keep someone safe that do not rely upon a closed iron door. My reality was that I appeared an implausible victim to anyone who viewed me next to my abuser. The law would not have believed me. Everyone I knew could tell a story of a woman arrested by the help she called for. Skilled counselors never saw my hesitancy to speak about my marriage as fear. They saw only my height, size, and ambiguously brown face, marking me as an aggressor who had yet to aggress. Police had been the same, even when I was young and still lived with my parents, often more dismissive, colder. No one thought that women could hurt each other. No one noted that a white woman had claimed ownership of me. So any number I could have called, I didn't. Any document I could have filed, I abandoned. I never wanted justice for myself to mean a locked room for her, or for abuse to become my only story. Throughout my life, I have always wanted to cut out the parts in me that seek punishment for others in order to feel strong again. The parts that would call for the kind of help that brings guns to the door. I have only ever had friends who pulled me to a raft and showed me I was drowning. The second poem is called In Kind, and this is the last one. Mornings I study my aging hands, lattice work on bare wood, stripped and knotted, bruised over. I praise the dimming eyes that fill in rain before it hits the alley, the mouth making ceaseless music above a cooling stove. In this new city, I'm trying to refashion a life in which I'm only ever kind, in which I hold my potential for unkindness inside me like an unlit cannon. The parts of me that will shatter or that remain shattered, the parts that may shatter others when ignited. Better to be ruined from within, I tell myself. Better if no one finds out what I came from. There's a song I know that invites mercy in, calls it into the room to linger next to me like an obedient dog or a devoted ghost. I no longer believe that I am kind, but I want to be. I hope that I used to be before my body was ransacked and pillaged, a city set alight. I do not know when the impulse toward goodness last lived within me. When I wake at the crest of my vision, there is a dim outline of something like love for those who saved me, for those still in need of saving, that shifts my numbed feet from the edge of the bed and pulls me to stand against my truest will. I have been and can be kind again, but I may never be harmless. The life where I do no harm sits beyond smoke-coated towers. It aches like the sweet unspooling of my spine with every year that passes. When I come near it, it crumbles to dust, unsettled by early winds. And that was it for us tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Ooh. Can we give a round of applause for the people? I'm looking at Alyssa. I was gonna say mangoes. Thank you to all of the readers who are all fellows from the 2024 Lambda Literary Emerge Writers Retreat. I also want to shout out Chloe Pfeffer, who is the program manager, the head person in charge of this, also a thought partner, co-conspirator, a ride or die in this anthology journey. So if we can shout out Chloe as well. I'm looking for Noam. Where is Noam? Where is Noam? I also want to shout out Noam Kaim for their incredible work in terms of getting the tech together, laying it down by the edges. Really want to shout them out. I think that sometimes, the people with the mic and the people with the spotlight are the folks who get the applause, but there's so many people who did incredible work to bring us here. Also want to shout out our ASL interpreters, Michelle and Kat, for their work showing up and showing out tonight. Thank you so much. And also all of you all, for the witnesses, shout yourselves out, please. A round of applause for you all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for attending to. Thank you for watching. Mary Oliver says, attention is the beginning of devotion. And so thank you for offering your attention this evening. Chloe.
Oil man, play now.
Thank you, Monet. Thank you to all of our readers. Earlier when I was welcoming all of the 2025 fellows in, I spoke of this legacy that they would be a part of as retreat fellows. And I think tonight was just a beautiful example of the power that these queer stories hold. So thank you, Monet, for your endless labor on this book. It is such a gorgeous, gorgeous book. I cannot wait for you all to read this. We've already got 6 orders while we were listening into the readers, so I expect many more to come in. And thank you so much to our interpreters, Michelle and Kat, and to the readers. It's always so amazing to see the fellows again after the retreat ends, and to hear your words again is just crushing. Meredith's piece, Shattered. Talk about shattered. Shattered me. And shout outs also to Holly, who's going to be our next Emerge editor. So we have it cooking. And here is the book. And make sure to order it. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight. Thank you for being a part of this beautiful legacy that we're creating. And to the fellows, the 2025 fellows, we'll see you tomorrow. And to the 2024 fellows, I miss you dearly. And thank you for sharing your work tonight. And thank you, Noam and Monet. Have a good night, everyone.